Kevin Lewis, who went over the ins and outs of credit and the importance of knowing credit, knowing where you are as far as that understanding credit, just so you can utilize that and leverage that as you move forward. Today we're going to have, Steve Taylor, who's going to go over the financial literacy portion, and we're going to get some great information on that. But also, I just want to thank everybody for their support. And as we go into next year, we're going to be going in depth as into our next month is going to be how to purchase a home, how to build wealth through home ownership, and we're still working on, hopefully we're able to get a mortgage representative here also that will help people with the ins and outs of the importance of the mortgage, how to do what's going to be best for you, because there are different types of mortgages for people out there that we just need to know what's going to be best for them. I know it's been a lot of talk, and some folks are, interest rates are too high, I'm not going to buy a home now. But interest rates are high, prices are high. Normally when interest rates are up, prices will come down. That's not the case right now. So I've had clients who I've talked to a couple years ago. Oh, I'm just going to wait till they come down. Well, now you're not. And you spent another 2 years sending someone else on vacation, paying someone else's mortgage. And those are 2 years that you cannot get back. So that's what we're going to be doing next month. But in the meantime, I'm going to pass it over to Pastor here, and he's going to introduce our next speaker. Thanks a lot for being here.
Amen. Thank you so much, Brother Ruff, for your leadership, and thank all of you who are here today. So we're going to embark upon an informational session, as he said, around developing wealth by understanding financial literacy. Now, unfortunately, our speaker today could not be with us today. Unfortunately, so what we did last night is that we used a little technology, and I started trying my little Oprah wings, and I was the interviewer, amen, right? And so this is really the tape session that he was going to do in person today, but that we did last night via technology. So all of us who are present can see it, and all of us who are on live stream can see it as well. And if you have any questions, don't ask me, because I don't know anything about this topic. But we can definitely write him, and he'll be with us in the spring to answer all questions. So thank you for being here today on the third installment of Building Black Wealth, Understanding Finances. Amen.
So good evening, or good morning, shall I say, and welcome to the third installment of Building Black Wealth, sponsored by the Asbury Community Church, located on 2220 Woodland Avenue in Woodland, New Jersey. I am Dr. Blackwell, the pastor of this faith community, and we are broadcasting from our campus, and we're actually broadcasting from the Rosa Parks room. You see Sister Rover here over my right shoulder looking on us, and we're grateful to her for her witness and for being such a pioneer in the fight for freedom and justice. This is the third installment, as I said, of Building Black Wealth, and our primary goal is to provide information to African American individuals and families and communities, so that we can develop a strategy to create generational wealth for ourselves, to turn our community around, to leave a better financial legacy to our sons and to our daughters, and to our children and children's children, and to help us to develop some kind of economic base so we can become more dependent on who we are and our genius, and not be dependent on the dominant culture. And so this morning, we have with us as our special guest, Mr. Stephen Taylor, who is a really native of Montclair, New Jersey, born and raised in the state of New Jersey. And now he resides down in Bowie, Maryland. And he is married to the lovely Melba Taylor. And they're the proud parents of Bakari David. And I know all this to be true because I was there at the wedding. Actually, I had the honor and privilege of being one of the officiants in the wedding. And their son, Bakari David, is the godson of Sister Ann Blackwell and myself. And I have enjoyed a 40-year uh, friendship with Mr. Taylor, and we met on the hallowed campus of Clark College back in the early '80s. And every year we traveled back to that sacred place, that sacred ancestral grounds, um, to enjoy the homecoming festivities with all of our classmates and who are now our colleagues. And so we're thankful for him to come today and to help lift up our financial literacy acumen and to raise our understanding of of money and investments and all the multiple things that we are going to talk about today. So let me say, Mr. Taylor, welcome,
Thank you, sir.
and thank you for your invitation to be with us. He is actually one of the founding members and architect of this movement. We met for about 6 or so months to put this, what you're experiencing together. And we are hoping that you will be blessed and informed and liberated and encouraged by what we talked about today. So, Mr. Taylor, last month we were blessed to have our second installment. And the topic for last month was for us, was instruction as to how we go about fixing our credit. Fixing our credit. It was a very, very dynamic thing. So I thought that perhaps a good place for us to start is to piggyback on what we learned last month. And if you can give us some instructions or create a framework for how we stay out of debt.
Thank you very much, Pastor Blackwell. Very honored to be here and contributing to this effort to increase our financial knowledge within the Black community and get our finances in order so that we can feel financially secure right now and in the future. Debt is something that usually everybody has to incur at some point in their life. I think there is necessary debt to just living. Very few people can buy a house cash. You need to get a mortgage. That's significant debt. I call it necessary debt, not bad debt. If you want to buy a car, many times you can't pay cash for a car. You got to get to work. So you finance a car. That's necessary debt. Not necessarily what I call good debt, just necessary debt. So debt is a part of our life. The issue is when we get unnecessary debt. We don't have to go into debt, but we do. So the question is, how can we not go into debt when we don't have to? What are the parameters we can put around our financial life so that we stay out of debt? One of the biggest things most people use to get into debt is credit cards. So let me just talk about what I think is the proper use of credit cards. First of all, most people have, how many credit cards would you say, Pastor? Most people have.
Oh, at least four, but in some cases more than that. Yeah, at least four.
At least four. All right. So I tell people, I tell folks, if you get one major credit card, MasterCard, Visa, American Express, Discover, one of the major credit cards, can you use that card everywhere you're using your other 3, 4, 5 cards? The answer is usually yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. People have these individual store cards, which they actually could use this major credit card. So one of the biggest things I tell people to do to stay out of debt is reduce the number of credit cards they have. Slowly but surely. You don't have to do it all at one time. You don't want to take a big hit to your credit report, your credit file, but we're talking how you position yourself long term to stay out of unnecessary debt. And you have to just kind of create the parameters where you're not as likely to get into debt. So you pare it down to one credit card, one major credit card. And what you do with this one major credit card is you increase the credit limit even though you're not going to use it like you normally would these other credit cards. But you do need to have credit. So the way you build credit is to have, it's crazy, is to be able to borrow money, but you don't borrow money. That's really what people who are loaning you money want to see. That you have the ability to borrow money, but you're not overusing that ability. So I tell people with your one credit card, usually I recommend getting it from a credit union. Credit unions give you services that the major banks won't. With your one major credit card, every year you call that credit union and you ask them to review your history because you had great history with this credit card. So you want them to either increase your credit line or decrease your interest rate. And you do this every year. And if you have they'll put you on hold. They will check your credit file. If you have a decent credit score, they will increase your credit limit every single year. So all of a sudden, this whole credit limit that you have will continue to grow, which again is what the lending agencies want to see, that you can borrow money, but you're not abusing that obligation, that opportunity. And you use this card just for convenience when you're traveling, right? You gotta rent a car, okay? But you're not in the stores like you were with those individual cards, just using it every single time. Yeah, a debit card can do everything that a credit card can do except get you into debt. A debit card can do everything a credit card can do except get you into debt. So use your debit card. Use your debit card, unless you really need to use your credit card. Because we're trying to keep you out of it. You just have to put these parameters in place. The gentleman who talked last week had some very good points. The only thing I had issue with was he did not enter into talking about behavioral finance, where one of the suggestions was you use your credit cards every month. If people use their credit cards every month, they're going to unintentionally get into debt. It's not going to be intentional. It's going to be unintentional because just the notion that I can use my credit cards and manage this process, when those credit card companies know people aren't going to pay all their balance off every month, even though they intend to. Okay, that's why they give you points. Points are nothing compared to the interest payments. So we need to just be aware of our behavior in terms of how we use credit cards, so that we don't abuse these credit cards by limiting it to one credit card, knowing how to use that credit card to increase your credit score, and when we talk about a budget in a minute, I want to tell you how this all ties into the budget.
So one of the questions I want to raise, just in response to your what you just said, you mentioned that a debit card can do everything that a credit card can do except get you into debt, right?
Mm-hmm.
But aren't debit cards able to be used as credit cards, or am I misunderstanding that?
So you can, yes, you have the option of using a debit card as a credit card, but not because they're giving you a line of credit on your credit card.
Yeah.
You're using it to get the safeguards that a credit card gives you when you use this instrument. So with a credit card, if you get, you purchase something and there's some fraud involved with somebody else using your card, you have some protections using a credit card. If you use a debit card and use the debit option, not the credit option, you don't have the protections. So you just use the credit card option on your debit card, not to borrow money and extend your income by using it. There's no really credit feature. You're just getting the credit protections by saying I'm going to use credit instead of it.
Okay, all right. Make sure your speaker is bumped up a little bit if you can.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Okay.
Okay, I need to move up.
All right. So I think that akin to staying out of debt, because there's a tendency for us to always to spend more than we make, to live above our means. How important is budgeting in the whole wealth creation process, and what kind of tips could you give us in teaching us how to budget effectively?
All right. So I do believe everybody should create a list of their expenses. I mean, legal pad, write it down. What are your monthly expenses for just maintaining your house? Everybody should do that exercise. Okay. Now, one of the things that I tell folks, once you kind of list your expenses, a lot of folks, have to spend everything they make, right? So rather than necessarily looking to play what I call defense, which is where can I cut? How can I, not spend enough on this item in order to save more over here? One of the things I talk about in budgeting is a lot of times you have to go on offense. The issue is more income is needed rather than more expenses need to be cut. I tell folks a lot of times, look, part-time job, a side hustle, an additional $500 a month doing whatever can change a person's whole financial situation. So let's first do the budget. Let's see if there's discretionary income, because you need discretionary income to save, right? A lot of times I see people doing budget, there's no discretionary income. The issue a lot of time, again, is not how can I cut something else, but how can I get more income to be able to not only meet these expenses, but also to be able to save money, because we're going to talk about emergency funds. We're going to talk about saving for retirement. So you just need to know what your expenses are. Do you have enough income coming in? Do you need to go on offense to get more income so that you can do all the things you need to do?
So how does budgeting help us to regulate our behavior? Earlier you talked about the importance of behavioral finance, and that it's really our behavior that gets us into debt. So does budget have the capability to manage our behavior that would get us into debt or not?
Well, it can help, right? It can help, because the whole idea is if you're tracking, if you know what your expenses should be for different items, and you have those expenses in your head. In other words, for entertainment, on the weekends, I go to the movies, I go out to dinner or whatever, and I budgeted, $40, for entertainment for the weekend, right? You know that because you've been writing down your expenses, you've been following it and seeing how you're doing. So you know mentally, this is my budget. Now you have to be disciplined enough to follow it. But if you never write it down, if it's just all in your head, you never look at it, you never have gone back and said, okay, how much did I spend last month? That the process of being intentional about your expenses will allow you to keep it up here so that you kind of stay on course. The other thing about budgeting is that in addition to kind of just staying on course, you want to automate your savings. And I'm particularly talking about retirement savings. Most folks who work on a job, whether it's private sector, public sector, they have a 401k, 457, 403b, one of those employer-sponsored retirement plans where you can, via payroll deduction, contribute to those plans. The whole idea is you want to save first and then spend what's left.
Save first and spend what's left.
And you do that automatically. You don't wait for it to hit your bank account and try to save. That's too tough. Okay, that's too tough. So use those employer-sponsored plans to save. I tell folks everybody should be saving at least 10% of their income. Minimum 10%. gross amount, you make $50,000 a year, 10% is 5,000, divide that by 26, that's how much you should be saving as a minimum. Then you spend what's left. And actually now your budget is created for you. Okay? But you should be comfortable that you're okay over here because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing long term with this savings.
So, speaking of savings, one of the things that our parents and our forebears have always taught us is that you got to save for a rainy day. And I think that perhaps in this economy, in this day and age, that translates into making sure that you have an emergency fund. Say a little bit about what an emergency fund is and what it's not, so we're clear about what it means for us to set aside resources to go into emergency fund. And should that emergency fund be tied to a debit card? Should it just be in a savings account? What are your recommendations?
Perfect. So let's go back to our budget for a second. So when people do a budget, a lot of times they're just listing the things that they have to pay every month: utilities, rent, mortgage, car payment, groceries. That's a lot of times what I see folks create a budget. One thing that's often missing are those necessary expenses that you have that don't necessarily come up every month, but they can come up sometime there. Car maintenance, clothes, house maintenance, gifts, out-of-pocket medical expenses. For most folks, at some point during the year, these type of expenses are going to come up. And so we have to budget for them. There should be a line item in your budget for these type of expenses. Now, I say that to say, for those type of expenses, you should have a savings account. You should have money saved. When these expenses come up, you have the money to pay. Okay? That savings account is not an emergency fund. That savings account are for expenses that you can expect to have, they just don't happen every month. Car maintenance is one of those type of expenses. If you have an old car, you're going to have to do some type of repair on it sooner or later. Okay? You have money saved to do that. So in other words, what I'm getting at is you should have a savings account for those expenses that you can expect to incur at some point in time. And you should have a separate emergency fund for those expenses that you can't budget for, you can't anticipate. These are two separate accounts. What happens most of the time is people combine both of these type of accounts, and you got one account trying to do too many things.
So give us some examples as to what would constitute what the emergency fund should be used for.
I tell you what the biggest use of emergency fund is for loss of income in the household.
Loss of income in the household.
Yes.
Okay.
Somebody's out of work. We can't really anticipate that, but it happens.
That's right.
Okay. Okay. So we need money to continue paying the bills like we have been. If that happens, it's something you just if you have to fly across the country for a funeral for a family member. You can't anticipate that, right? So, I mean, certain things you just can't anticipate. So the emergency fund should be at least 3 times your monthly expenses, sometime up to 6, depending. But at least 3 times your monthly expenses. Just add up your budget, right? What it takes to run your household every month. Multiply it times 3, that's the amount. Add it to the minimum you should have in your emergency fund. Your emergency fund should not be in the same financial institution as your checking account. It should be somewhere else, not as easy to get to. Your emergency fund should be something that you ideally never even use. It's a peace of mind. If something did happen, I'm okay. Something you never even use. Okay? You put it in a CD or something, it shouldn't be invested. You don't want the value going up and down with the market, okay? But you can earn a little interest rate on it. But you have an emergency fund over there, your savings account over here. The two shall never meet.
So give us again the figure. So it should be 3 times your monthly expenses should
Yeah.
be the goal to have an emergency fund.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
3 times your monthly expenses.
3 times your monthly expenses.
Got you.
Set aside. And it's really important to fund it early on. A lot of times the question becomes, what's the priority? Funding my emergency fund or paying off this debt? That's what I get all the time. Folks haven't saved much, they're in debt. What do I do? Do I put money aside for an emergency fund and put off paying off this debt, or what should I do? So you don't have to fully fund your emergency fund initially, but you need to have something set aside so that every time another situation comes, you're not using a credit card and getting in more debt. Okay, so take a couple of months to set aside money in an emergency fund while you're just paying minimums. While just paying minimums, get some money set aside, and then start tackling the debt. So you got to kind of multitask for a while, but that's an issue oftentimes. What do I do first? What's the priority?
So one of the as you're talking about emergency funds, what's kind of going around in my head is parents' ability or inability to provide financial support for their sons and daughters who are in college. Most of us molded and shaped in democratic capitalism buy into the whole notion of that you want a piece of the pie, you want the American dream, and that means a house and a car, a vacation house, a timeshare. But far too often, not included in that scenario, is funding for your son's daughter to go to college. So say a little word about when and how do you save to help put your kids through college, and is tuition an emergency is something that you're tapped for the emergency from the emergency fund.
Well, what's the definition of emergency? An unanticipated expense that you could not plan for.
Okay.
Could you plan for college expenses?
Yeah. I guess parents do, but I guess if that plan is constructed with some kind of anticipation or expectation that there's going to be scholarships and things like that, and the scholarships fall through, or they go to a college that is very, 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 very expensive.
Well, okay, let's tackle that second one first.
Okay.
College is very, very expensive. So there's a personal finance columnist that writes for the Washington Post. Her name is Michelle Singletary. She's been writing for personal financial issues for the Washington Post for years and years. She's very good, a Black sister, and she oftentimes uses her family as an example of different personal finance issues. And so she recently had her daughter write the article for her, explaining her college journey from talking to her parents about which school to go to her experience at the school from a financial standpoint. What she said was she had in high school fell in love with University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. That was her dream college. Okay, Michelle Singletary and her family, they live in Maryland, and Michelle and her husband had saved money for college for their daughter, and they had told their daughter that these are the kind of colleges that we can afford based on what we save without going into debt. We've saved enough to put you through college without going into debt. But she said, I was not convinced that they wouldn't let me go to North Carolina. You know, that was my dream school. I really thought they were going to figure out how to let me go to North Carolina. She said they didn't budge. They said, we have enough for you to go to these schools that cost this amount. That's what it is. Okay. And so she ended up going to the University of Maryland, stayed local. She wanted to go away, but she found out that being at a big time university like University of Maryland, staying on campus, felt like she was away from home. And she said she enjoyed the college experience. And she really appreciates at the end of her college experience, she had no student debt because her parents were able to afford it without her getting into debt or them getting into debt. And just the hindsight of a young lady knowing that what she felt was going to be a smart choice for her ended up not being such a smart choice because now she really understands what her parents are. So you know, like I always say, you know, it's the parents who really are the driving force behind whether or not they're going to get serious debt or their kids are going to get serious debt. So have that adult conversation with your kids about what you can afford if you have not saved college. I talk to some folks, kids in high school, they ask them, you know, Steve, how can I, you know, afford college for my kid? He's in 10th grade. They haven't saved any money. All right.
So,
You know.
let's just stay there.
Mhm.
That parents, let's just stay there. So,
Mhm.
suppose the parents have not saved for the kids to go to college. The kids are junior in high school, one more year left. What do they need to do? What should be the strategy um, to help them get to the point where that kid can go to school?
Okay. So,
Loans.
couple things. So let's talk about loans right away. So, so the two type of loans that people get, they get federal loans or private loans. You should always get federal loans and try to stay away from private loans. Federal loans have a lot of advantages in terms of deferment, in terms of there's what's called the Public Service Debt Forgiveness Program, where if somebody works in the public sector, after 10 years, whatever the balance of their loan is at that time can get forgiven. Federal loans are much more advantageous for somebody to get than private loans. Okay, private loans don't have all those advantages. Private loans are the ones where a parent can co-sign. Okay, where the parent gets in trouble. You know, when the kid doesn't pay. But so loans are one option. I do tell folks, you know, if push comes to shove, uh, you know, and you need to get a loan, make sure it's a federal. But just in terms of strategies, you need to really look at potential scholarships, and you know, a lot of, you know, if your kid plans on, you know, becoming an engineer or whatever, there are always these associations, these professional associations that often have scholarship money. There's millions and millions and tens of millions of dollars of scholarship money that never goes claimed because people just don't know about it. Okay, so first you have to research uh, local, more than national scholarship opportunities, but a lot of times it's local scholarship opportunities. You know, somebody give you $1,000, somebody give you 2,000. And those things help. All those things help. And then see if you can just go to an in-state school. In-state is much less expensive than out-of-state, right? If a kid has to stay on campus for maybe, you know, a year or two just to get costs down, that may be you know, an opportunity to save quite a bit of money. And if you're saving for retirement, you don't stop saving for retirement, but for a 2 or 3 or 4 year time period, maybe you can reduce what you're contributing just to be able to cash flow a portion of it if you can't do it without reducing. That's kind of the last, you know, resort where you're actually reducing what you're saving for retirement. But sometimes, rather than getting into debt, Rather than taking out Parent Plus loans, you may want to do a portion of it through cash flow. So it's an assortment of things that you have to do. There's no, to me, one way you finance college. The expenses are just too high. So you bundle different type of strategies to tackle.
Yes, thank you for the insight. And I would add to that that community college is also an option for your first 2 year
Sure.
to get all your foundational prereqs out the way, and then from there to a 4 year school.
Just make sure the college you want to go to is going to accept those credits.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for that. So um, we've been talking about staying out of debt and budgeting and how to establish some kind of emergency fund and strategies that we need to put in place to be able to finance the education for our sons and our daughters. I think that one of the things that all of us would like to be able to do is live a comfortable life, to kind of live out the life of our dreams. Um, and the unfortunate thing or the challenge in that is that sometimes we spend more than we make, or we do not make a livable wage.
Mhm.
And so say a word about investments and how do we invest? What do we invest in? Are utilities the best way for us to invest? Are stocks the best way for us to invest? Um, should we spend time with a financial planner or a person who does investments? Um, give us some insights on that and some parameters. And how little should we invest? Should we invest $100 or should we invest $10,000? What should be the mode of operation here?
Sure. So the primary investment vehicle for most folks who are in the workforce is their employer-sponsored retirement plan. So if you're in the private sector, your employer probably has a 401k. Okay, if you work for a hospital or in an educational institution, your employer probably has a 403b. If you work for a municipality, a city, a county, a state, your employer probably has a 457 plan. And if you work for the federal government, you have a TSP, a thrift savings plan. Okay, all these vehicles are where the bulk of your money should be saved for several reasons. One is automatic savings. It comes right out of your paycheck before you ever see it. Two, a lot of times there's a match. Your employer is contributing also based on how much you contribute. Three, there are tax advantages to these plans that are not available if you go out in the retail market and try to invest on your own. Significant tax advantages. So the first place people need to maximize their ability to invest in these vehicles is your employer-sponsored retirement. How much should you contribute? A minimum of 10% of your pay.
It said to get a member of 10% of your
A
income.
minimum of 10% of your gross income. Okay. If you make $100,000 a year, 10% of that is $10,000 a year. You divide that number by 26 pay periods. That's how much you should have going into that fund. And the interesting part about these pre-tax savings plans is that the amount that you contribute, your take-home pay is not reduced by that same amount. So if you contribute $1,000 a pay period, even though $1,000 is going into your 401k, your take-home pay is only being reduced by $750 because it's pre-tax, the way the whole pre-tax contribution works. So a lot of people can contribute a lot more than what they think they can. But that's the first place people should be investing. In not only the 401k or the 457, but also Roth IRAs. Your employer may offer a payroll Roth IRA. It's kind of the mirror opposite of your 401k, where your 401k, you're putting in money pre-tax, where you're getting a tax advantage opportunity as soon as you put the money in. It's reducing your tax burden. Okay, however much you put in, if you make 100,000, you put 10,000 into this 401k. Now, for tax purposes, you only make 90,000. It's reducing your tax burden. Okay, all the growth on it grows tax deferred. Okay, you're not paying taxes on the earnings of that account while it's in there, and then when you take it out, you pay taxes there. The Roth IRA is just the opposite. You've already paid money on the money you put in, no tax advantage to put money in. However, as the money grows, when you take it out, no taxes on the growth. Okay, tax-free when you take it out. So again, use your employer-sponsored plan. In terms of investing, most folks, to be quite honest, are not savvy investors. So I implore people to go to the seminars, to get a book on investing. Don't just talk to your coworker at your cooler about how to invest. Okay, you'd be amazed at how many times I hear people say, "Well, so and so said." Okay, no. Go to seminars put on by professionals. Talk to your employer-sponsored plan representatives. But you have to really be careful. Most of the financial quote-unquote advisors out here are simply salespeople. They just want to sell you something. Okay, they'll sell you a life insurance policy and say this will be your retirement account. One of the worst decisions you can make. Okay, so again, educate yourself. Use these employer-sponsored plans. Also, add a Roth IRA if you can. There's some rules around it. Research that. Become knowledgeable somewhat. Use a financial professional to build a portfolio so that you don't have to do everything yourself.
What would be helpful, I think, for us, if there are any specific books or videos or seminars that you would recommend, if you would get that to us, then I can disseminate it, put it on our website, so persons would know who you recommend, but also for people who we should stay away from, right? Particularly when you've not done the work in researching
Right.
this particular field out. So you kind of mentioned in your conversation about a life insurance policy not being the basis for your retirement plan. So let's kind of segue into that and talk a little bit about this whole retirement plan. You work all your life, and you save. Hopefully you invest. You become 60, 70. Hopefully that you have a pension. Let's talk about retirement and for persons who are late 50s and going into 60s, that if they have not had a retirement plan, what steps can we take to kind of get them on that path?
Okay, so you mentioned pensions. I hadn't mentioned pensions yet, simply because a lot of folks don't have them these days. If you do have one, you're fortunate. Pretty much in the private sector, they've gotten rid of pensions. They're still prevalent in the public sector. Most government states and cities and counties, the federal government all still provide a pension, which is a great thing to have, no doubt. However, for those who don't have a pension, that's why I'm employing folks to use these retirement accounts, starting when they first start working, putting money in them, because now you are really responsible for creating your own retirement. And if you don't do it, it's not going to get done. So, if you are later in life, have not saved sufficiently, earlier in life, there are a couple of things you can do. You can contribute what they call a catch-up contribution to the retirement accounts. So, for instance, in the 401k, you can put up to $23,000 a year maximum into a 401k. If you're age 50 or over, you can put in an additional $7,500, so you can put up to $30,500. Now, hopefully, at 50, maybe the kids, you're out of college now, right? Your income's higher than it's ever been. You may be able to get up to those limits. Okay, you may be able to get up to those limits where you're using these catch-up contributions that are particularly there for folks who have not saved enough earlier in their career. Okay, so use the catch-up contributions. You want to actually have a plan on when you're going to retire, how much income you're going to need, and this is where you probably want to consult with a financial planner, and you want to see if there's one provided by your employer. You don't have to pay out of your pocket to get a plan done. Many employers will have representatives who can help you create a plan. So what they're going to do is they're going to say, let's take a look at your Social Security statement. Okay, let's go ahead and project out how big your balance will be if you continue contributing at the rate you currently contribute. Will you get retiree health insurance from your employer? How's it going to be done? Okay, they'll look at all these factors to see, based on what your ideal retirement age is. Somebody will say, well, I want to retire when I'm 66. Okay, well, if you're 59 now, let's see, based on what you're doing now, if you can produce about 80% of your income, because that's really the ideal. If you can replace 80% of your pre-retirement income, you can pretty much maintain your lifestyle. Now, the good thing with a pension, this is why the pension is so important for so many people. So a pension, if you work 30 years for an employer, generally a pension will replace about 50% of your income. You made $100,000. Your last 3 years of working, you average around $100,000. Most pensions after 30 years will replace about 50%, about $50,000. You add on Social Security. Social Security, depending on when you take it, anytime between 62 and 70, depending on when you take it, will replace anywhere from maybe 25% up to maybe about 40% of your income, depending on when you take it. Okay, of course, you get higher Social Security benefits if you wait closer to 70. Is discounted quite a bit if you take it as early as 62. So if you add these two percentages together, 50% pension and Social Security is going to replace 30%, you're at 80% replacement. You're at 80% replacement. Okay. Now, the challenge becomes if you don't have a pension and you haven't saved enough. Now maybe you can't get up to this 80%. To be honest, not unless you maximize. So one of the things we talk about when folks who are just kind of late in savings is maybe you're going to need to work a little longer to maximize your Social Security benefit. Okay, Social Security goes up by 6% between the ages 62 and 67. 6% every year increases. Between 67 and 70, it goes up by 8%. So you can really kind of help yourself many times by simply working a little longer. People don't want to hear it. Working a little longer, maxing out Social Security, doing the catch-up contribution to your retirement account. And the push comes to shove, right? If you own a home, you have equity in that home, okay? Maybe you're still paying a mortgage, but you have equity. Maybe you can downsize, take the equity out, buy something cash, get rid of your mortgage, right? So we have to bring in some other factors. Okay, you have to bring in some other factors if we really want you, because nobody wants to work forever. I get that. And I talk to people all the time who have not saved well. who need to retire. A lot of times for health reasons, they have to stop working. They can't work. So what do we do? So yes, we have to put a plan together. Look at all your resources. Let's bring the kids in. Let's talk to them. you know, and just strategize how we're going to make this work.
Well, let me just ask this one question. I've just been thinking and reflecting as you've been talking. Um, what advice would you give to families? Would you give to churches um, to heighten our understanding of the importance of helping our people, Black people, to understand wealth, um, to do the kind of things that we've talked about here today? Um, there's some books out there like Paranomics by Claude Anderson and so forth. But what kind of advice? I mean, I think what we're trying to do here at the Asbury Community Church is revolutionary, in trying to help people to understand that that wealth creation is takes work and is intentional and it takes discipline. And we've been providing, I think, some tremendous information here at Asbury Community Church. We got another 5 or so sessions to go into next year, and people obviously have not taken hold of this free information that could change their lives. So, is there anything else that families and organizations and churches need to continue to do? We're going to run this program in some form next year as well, beginning in September. It's so feel free to kind of share on that.
Yeah. I think you kind of just, it's not a one time offer that you make. You I call it dripping on people, where you're on a kind of consistent basis talking about these items, having a seminar on these items, offering a book on this topic. So it's, over time, somebody will catch on and say, yeah, okay, yeah, I heard this before. I know I need to do it this time. So you're not going to catch everybody the first time. The second time, they still in debt. They heard about this seminar. They didn't go last week. I'm still, now I need to go. So you catch people at different times by, I think, being consistent with the effort to reach them. I think just have to be consistent with the effort to reach them. And I think you will reach more people than you think you would if you stay consistent with your effort to reach them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Taylor, thank you so much for your insight. It was extremely informative and challenging, and I think that those persons who are viewing this seminar today have been educated and empowered. I'm sure that there will be tons and tons and tons and tons of questions. And if there are questions, we invite them to send them into the chat that's online, and to invite you back again to have those questions answered. But thank you so much. It's been just an amazing time. For about the last hour, I think it's been actually for the last 50 minutes. Dropping a little knowledge, like you did back at Clark, because that's what we do. We drop knowledge, right?
Yes, sir.
That's part of our task and calling on our lives. But thank you so much for not only for this, but thank you for 40 years of friendship, and thank you for being a part of helping us to shape this curriculum that we've been providing for people. And I'm still excited about seeing what God's going to do with all of this. Somebody is going to get this information and have a life changing experience. And then we expect them to multiply uh, uh, the knowledge they got in the lives of other people. Amen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
thank you so much, sir. And we look forward to seeing you again sometime in the next year
Okay.
to do part 2 of this. Amen. As we move forward. All right.
Appreciate your leadership, brother.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And thank you for all of you all who tuned in today here at Asbury Community Church. And we hope that you will be with us tomorrow morning as we are on our second Sunday in the month of Advent, as we have put our memories on pause to experience the coming of the Messiah again. And we hope that you'll be with us next month and every second Sunday in the month as we try to give you some opportunity to get some information to help you build black wealth, not only for yourself, but for the next generation and for generations to come. And as I always say, as we sign on a Sunday morning, that until we meet again, remember, whatever you do, make sure you keep the faith. Shalom.
Started this, we had this is our third installment, and once again, I guess we're three for three, Pastor? 3 for 3. That was great. That was great. My big takeaway from that was, as we continue through this, is to be consistent, with these conversations. And one of the things that we tend to do in our communities is that we don't talk about money. We don't talk about finances. Everybody wants to have a good time at the barbecues, enjoying themselves and so forth and all. You have young folks there, telling us the latest thing that's going on. But we need to talk about money. We need to talk about saving money, what you're doing with your money, the future, and us as elders to those young folks, we need to tell them, hey, listen, be careful with your money. You got to plan for the future. Just to share something for you real quick. I have two daughters in college. And one of them, my goodness, boy, if she's got a penny, she's going to squeeze another out of it. And the other one, she has no concept. Don't even care. It just grows on trees and whatever. I need this and whatever. Worry about that later. So we got the yin and the yang here. So it's been tough trying to manage both of them. But, we're getting through it. But, we did begin to have those conversations with them earlier. And one, to be honest with you, took heed with it. And the other one, they just, right here, But we still have to continue to do that as we move forward. And, as Pastor was saying that, beginning in September, we're going to have other, subjects that we're going to, discuss. Next month, like I said, we're going to talk about buying your first home, building wealth through home ownership. Bring your questions. It's going to be more interactive than just me talking and everybody listening. So whatever questions that you do have, please, feel free. As I said earlier, we were talking about interest rates and so forth, and people are like, well, I don't know if I want to, whatever. People that don't look like us, they don't worry about interest rates. They don't worry about interest rates. The value is in the property, period. And what some people don't know, that when we hear these conversations, they're national conversations. It's not local. There are products out there that you can still get a 5% mortgage, 5.5% mortgage. Not all in 7s. Next year, once it gets in the 6s again as they go down, you're going to see that frenzy again that happened 2 years ago. And we're going to be outside looking in, trying to catch the bus as it leaves the station. So this is why it's so important that we do have these conversations and that we do know what it is that we can do so we can, begin to build wealth. Another thing that hopefully that we'll get more in depth, which is extremely, extremely important, is when it comes to deeds, wills, and trusts. We have people living in homes where their name is not on the deed. And God forbid something happens, then, if you're not a blood relative, you're just a squatter. So it's really, really important. Again, as, the inevitable happens and people move on and pass on, we know that these paperwork, all this stuff is in order. Because once they're gone, people think I got power of attorney. No, that while the person's living, that's what's important. Once they pass, that power of attorney means nothing. So again, as we go through the holiday season, let's have these conversations. It doesn't have to be anything serious, but put a plug in some young folks' mind. Hey, what are you doing with your money? How you doing? How's everything? You need to save some. look out for the future. $500 sneakers. You know, a couple months they're gonna get dirty and not gonna be worth them. So it's real important what you do with your money. I don't, have anything else. Pastor, you want to say about this?